everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Neater Art History, where I am sitting telling you some art history stories while knitting. But today I will not knit anything because I finally finished that blue sweater that I was knitting in a previous video and haven't started anything new because clearly, as you can see, I got distraught by another thing. I just one morning woke up, just saw some Ukrainian jewelry, and I was like, well, this is beautiful, I want to make one. And one, turned into like a lot already, considering that I've been doing this just for a week. So yeah, so as by the name of this video, you can see that today we will be talking about this. I decided that, well, why not? I found a very good book. I found some of the, themes in this book. So I decided, well, our next video, I wanted to make about an artist, so we would moving on from this jewelry theme. But, well, not today, clearly, as you can see, not today. So yeah, so again, as you already saw by the name of the video, today we'll be talking about traditional Ukrainian beads, jewelry. Grab your drinks, grab your food. I'm not grabbing anything because I don't have anything to do. Well, I mean, I have, but but I have also things that they needed to be knitted by seams. So yeah, so you need to be very focused when you're doing this, and I clearly cannot do this when I'm talking and that, like, yes, well, whatever. Moving on. Let's dive into our video. I will start from the period of Kievan Rus, obviously, and Kievan Rus, so Kievan Rus was founded in 9th century, and well, this is like this is where we Ukrainians are originated from. This is like ancient Ukraine, as we can say, and this is like ethnically Ukrainian territories, and this is our history, Ukrainian history. So already in this period of time, also before I will start, so we would have some problems with terminology here. I found, it caught me by surprise when I was translating my material to English, because apparently you in English, you don't have different words for different materials. Everything is called beads. And it's so confusing. So I would try, to make it as easy as possible to understand, because I mean, we will be talking about beads like this, but apparently beads is also everything else, just some like every other material that you can put on the string. But well, I would try to make this as easy as possible. So yeah, so as I said, in the period of Kievan Rus, that was already a well-known material. I mean, this one, not just overall beads, but specifically the little ones. And until the 11th century, they were imported from different countries. Mostly, like, for example, we know for sure that in 10th century, well, those are considered to be a glass things. This is a glass making thing, right? Well, the glass is originated from Syria, and thus there is no surprise that the main importer, one of the two main importers of glass beads were Syria, because well, they were one of the centers of glass making, not just beads but overall glass making. This is, as I said, where we believe that the glass was invented back then there. And it is known that they were importing to Kievan Rus like two types of these beads. So just colored ones and also gold-plated or silver-plated ones. Another main importer of these beads were Byzantium Empire from 5th to 13th century. At least we know for the fact that there was production like Byzantium beads on the market. And well, again, about Byzantium, it's no surprise because well, I don't know if a lot of you know, but well, Kievan Rus and Byzantium Empire was very, very, Byzantium was influencing Kievan Rus a lot, and just overall, the Orthodox Church, and thus you see there is no surprise that one of the main importers was Byzantium, because we had a very, very strong diplomatic connection, economical connection, political connections, and all this stuff. Like one of the first like for you to understand kings, but we didn't have this title as king, we had the title as kniaz, but basically it was the head of the country. He married a daughter of one of the Byzantine emperors, and this is actually how we were all baptized into Orthodox religion here, because it was one of the... Oh man, I'll tell you. Oh my god, being like, I forgot even this word in Ukrainian. Reason? No, not reasons. That was one of the points, how he could get married to this woman, because, well, they were already Orthodox. We were still pagans, and, well, history started like that. So, again, nothing new. That I didn't even know why I started to rumble about this. I mean, I think that just to say that this was a common thing, that was enough for me to tell for you. So yeah, so Byzantium also was one of the centers of glassmaking. They also had their old techniques that already, you know, well-known techniques that they were very good at. So they were obviously important, their glass for, well, it was, you know, mostly glass for mosaics, but I think, you know, all of these beads, just beads overall, I think it was not a problem for them either. At the end of the 10th century, the birth of ancient Kievan Rus, you know, tradition of making and processing this glass, glass just overall begins. And, you know, they were making it little by little. That's why I told you that most of the things were imported from Syria and Byzantium. But they started to work on their own production. And why the end of the 10th century? Because we have some archaeological findings of this, you know, of this glass beads. They were still very, well, not very, you know, skillful, not very successful, different, well, not very good forms or something like that. However, we can say that the production already started too, and, you know, they were searching for their techniques, well, mastering their skills. And the development of this new craft was facilitated by the rise both of political and economical situation of Kievan Rus. At this time, Byzantium, which had a stable and well, again, perfect glass production technology, had a strong influence on Kievan Rus, as I said, and it is believed that the impetus for the birth of this new business, of this new field in the territory of Kievan Rus was probably because the work on, well, the oldest church started, the work of the church Desatinna Tsarkva. So it is destroyed now. It was destroyed by Soviet Unions and by Soviets, so we don't have it now. And overall, just you see, there is pretty a lot of problems with, you know, with starting this church. So we don't know for a fact how this church looked like. We don't know for a fact what plan this church had. We don't know for the fact what was inside of the church in terms of decoration, so what type of mosaics or, you know, just overall the frescoes and all this stuff. And now, as I said, it is destroyed, and we have just the foundation, you know, of this church. So it is situated in the center of the Kiev, and so it is, you know, we have like our history of my history museum of history of Ukraine on the back, like on a yard. I think you can go to the yard. You have this plan, this foundation. So I mean, you can walk there, and this foundation is, you know, is not an accurate foundation because, as I said, we don't know for a fact how this church looked like, but this foundation was created because by our scientists, researchers, by our art historian, our like culturologists and all of this stuff, considering, you know, just overall the tradition that we had back then, because this is the Desatinna Tsarkva, it was the church of our knyaz, of the head of our country. So obviously, you know, they were considering all of these facts, and they were considering what type of traditions already was back then in architecture, especially in religious architecture. And because of that, you know, they created this thing. So we believe that it was, well, probably it looked something like that. Not 100% accurate, but probably it looked like something like that. And yeah, so the same thing we have with our Golden Gate. So maybe some of you, you were in Kiev, you consider to go here after the war would end and to see it on your own. So the Golden Gate also situation is very funny because so it is situated on our metro, our tube station, Golden Gates, Золоті Ворота, and there is nothing to do with gold. They were not from gold. And there on this station, like you are getting out of the station, of this tube station, you will like directly get out and you will see the Golden Gate. And first of all, we have no idea how they look like. So this is this is like a sarcophagus. Yeah. So this is not even a reconstruction. This is just, to prevent, like, we basically have here just two walls like that. This is everything that we have from the Golden Gates, because it was destroyed like centuries ago already, and we know just something by the from the 18th century. There is a drawing of few of the French travelers who were like going around here in Ukraine, and they made some drawings of this, so we have no idea how they look like. So this, this reconstruction is like reconstruction, so it's, again, an interpretation of some of the researchers. And another funny thing about that, I don't actually know if they're telling this on the excursions or not, but it actually reversed. I don't know how you could put, like, how you could make this when they were building, but they built it the reversed way. So I mean, the facade that like you're going out of the tube, and the first facade as you see, it actually needs to be inside of the city, because this is like the inside part, and the city was like, back then it was on the other side. So the part where is tube now, back then it was just a field. There were, these things made for, for the protection with water and all of this stuff. There were nothing. But, and well, again, I don't know how they could have built it like this, but eventually they built it, and they built it wrongly, wrong direction. So yeah, so another thing. So with Desatina, we have the same thing. We have no idea how it looked like, what was inside. So yeah, but why I'm telling all of this, it is believed that obviously, because this was a kniaz church, that was, again, the church of the head of the country, it was it was decorated very richly, the same way maybe as we have our other beauty, our other pearl of our Ukrainian culture is Софіївська церква, like Софіївська church. It is situated in the same part of Kiev, so yeah, you know, this is like Софіївська church, and you just need to go straight and you will go to the Desatina. And so our Софіївська church is one of the oldest one. So yeah, so there is in Софіївська church, there's a lot of frescoes. There is the part where the altar is made up of mosaics. So obviously, it was considered that, well, most probably the Desatina looked something the same way, and thus it was also believed that this colored smalt for the mosaics was created, like part of them was created probably in Byzantine, but probably was created on site in Kiev actually. And this is how the Kievan, old Ukrainian masters, they most probably saw how this material was done, how this mosaics, how this glass was created, and this is how, and they try to learn this technique and reproduce, this is the word I was searching, reproduce these things themselves. However, the main technology remained a secret for ancient Ukrainian manufacturers. The first products obviously was made from the simplest, the simplest techniques, the simplest formulas. I will not even try to name it, because I somehow, I started to do this, I started to translate it, and then I was like, well, first of all, I have even no idea if this is right, what I'm translating in English, because I am not familiar with this type of terminology. I'm not even familiar with this type of terminology in Ukrainian, let alone in English. So I decided, plus, I mean, I don't really think that it will be very fun to listen to, for you to this, but well, the only thing that I will just explain obviously was a very, pretty easy techniques, pretty easy stuff, pretty easy formulas. Then they were creating this first beds, this first glass. It's not just about beds. It's just overall the opaque glass. And they were using then some mineral dyes. Most often these were dyes of yellow, green and brown colors. Then at the end of the first quarter of the 11th century, our Kiev craftsmen, they found a formula that allowed them to create a glass with a low melting point. And this made it possible to obtain, so in Ukrainian it is called long glass. So I'll translate it also like this because I am not sure if there is an analog in English, but well, in Ukrainian it's called long glass, which retained, plasticity for a very long time. So you could, create different shape, different things, not straight from the furnace, from the old furnace, I think is the right way, right? Not oven, from the furnace. So this was the new glass was created, new glass was found by our masters. This is how the production of opaque and transparent glass was established in Kievan Rus. But I will make a little, note about transparent glass. So I don't think that we are talking about. Well, most probably we're not talking about this transparent glass that we have now, because transparent glass was created. It is believed that it was the first time in the world. It was created by Angelo Barovieri, by on Murano Island, by Murano master. And Angelo Barovieri lived in 15th century, so it was created in 15th century. And this is how the fame came to Murano glass making. This is how they became even more popular, and they became from 15th to 17th century they were the main producers of the glass. I don't think about the whole world, but in a whole Europe, and I just always think just the Mediterranean region, at least it was 100%. They were the main production of glass. Multicolored glass was a pretty distinctive feature of Kievan Rus, masters of ancient Ukrainian glassmakers. And everything was going pretty well, actually. That in the second half of the 12th century and in the beginning of the 13th century, the Kiev glass was in demand were far beyond the borders of Kiev itself. So except for the outskirts of Kievan Rus itself, it was also popular in Baltic states and also in Poland. Masters obviously was creating beads, and beads, I mean beads, not just like this. I even I will even show. I even took some of my examples. This is pearls, but just whatever, just beads like this. Just some round beads. They were ellipses, spheres and cylinders, whatever. So just overall a material to be put on the thread. Also they were sometimes creating some decorated beads. They would put some other smaller glass on them. But we have archaeological findings of this type of beads, but they are pretty rare. So this is maybe some kind of exceptions out of the rule. Mostly they were creating just simple different forms beads without any decorations. But unfortunately in the so technically it's considered to be the first half of the 13th century, so in 2040s, we have a Mongolian invasion in Ukraine. Not just in Ukraine, overall, the whole of the country, and other countries and to Europe. Unfortunately, obviously, the local tradition of glassmaking started to decline, and in the following century, so it stayed in some of the centers, but there were, just very little of them stayed. And by the next century, so 14th century, the last workshops, they stopped working altogether. So as I already said, beads like these beads, they were already very popular in the period of Kievan Rus. And we even have some of the written sources, for example, a source of written work of one of Arab writer Ahmed ibn Fadlan. I'm sorry if I mispronounced something. So this source is dated by, so he was traveling by our territories in the year of 121-22, and he already wrote that, well, Slavic people, they very fond of beads. They're very fond of jewelry of beads, created of beads, and especially they were using a lot of green beads, and just overall, I mean, these beads, I'm talking right about this one, and overall, he said that man was trying to buy even, the smallest beads, just like beads like this one, for their women to create some necklaces, because this is how fond of everything we were. And also we have some archaeological findings from this period of time, where so some of the clothes were actually preserved, which is very nice. And it was found out that except of wearing it as a necklace, creating as necklaces out of these beads, we were also very fond, like our ancestors were very fond of sewing beads on their clothes or on their hats. And so when the Mongolian invasion started, a lot of people fled their homes, obviously, and a lot of them fled to the western part of, like, western north part of our country of Ukraine. Well, back then of Kievan Rus, but it's us. And there is this there we have a lot of forests. This is a foresty place, foresty territories. There's a lot of forest, there's a lot of swamps. So yeah, it's some of the parts actually, like a very north part of Ukraine, are very dangerous actually. If you don't know the territory, it's like you can die, because there's a lot of swamps there, and we have a lot of different very creepy legends out of there. But well, the other thing is to add for me here is that our territory, so our like Kyiv region, also we have this, and just Kyiv and overall just the north part of Ukraine. North, I think there's like sort of Kyiv, Chernihiv, like Sumshchina. So this is part we have, this sandy ground. So there's quite literally there is sometimes parts in the forest. I mean, I still even have I live in the north of Kyiv, and we have like a lot of forest here. And sometimes I would now I can walk, because everything is like there is a lot of bombs there, but well, back then you could walk, and there would be quite literally some parts where you would walk like you're on a beach, because there would be like, I think it's safe to say, like meter or even meter and a half of just sand. So this is what this is the type of ground that we have in this part. And when they were fleeing, they started to settle down in this forest, and they were trying to obviously create some environment for the work. And this is how such thing as hutnictvo developed in Ukraine. So hutnictvo, the whole world is coming from the word huta. Huta is basically the name of the furnace. And well, basically what they were doing, I mean, this is not a direct technique, obviously, just for you to understand. They were melting sand, just like Syrians did, and they were creating glass. So hutnictvo is basically creating glass. And it is believed, there is some assumption that the tradition of old Rus glassmaking was partially preserved in and developed in hutnictvo. But the main things that this manufacturer, so called like this, was creating, it was bottles mostly, and also glass for the windows. So well, so it's under the question whether they were doing some this little things, whether it was possible for them to do that. But I think obviously they did something, but it was not, the main thing, the main focus was on not just bottles, just overall just the production of tableware and window glass. So we cannot talk about, the restoration of the production of beads, because the time will pass before, we will start to create our own beads on the territory of Ukraine. It will be much later, like centuries later. And unfortunately, it will be very unsuccessfully. So yes, we don't have still our own production of beads. And I think that I need to mention, and I will mention about like Kievan Rus and Russia. So I mean, it's nothing to do in common. Like I don't know if it will be news for you or not, but Russia is an artificial name, and they were never called Russia. They were called Moscovia, and they're not Russian. They're Moscovians. And the word Russia actually came in 1721 by the Piotr I. He created this because he wanted to, he tried to claim that all of the territories, our territories, they invaded, it was rightfully theirs, but it's not. We are way older than this country. We are, well, okay, I will not drag about this because I think that a lot of you are actually not ready for this conversation, but well, basically just for you to not, don't get it messed up. Another thing is also, you see, traditionally old Ukrainians were called Rusini, and Rusini is not Russians, because they are Moscovians. So Russians is Moscovians and Ukrainians is Rusini. So traditionally this is like Rusini is our old name. But then when we became, Ukraine, we started to call ourselves Ukrainians, obviously. Yeah, just, brief thing. So, I mean, everything that I'm talking about, it has nothing to do with Russia, never was, and it's not their part. They're trying to steal our culture so badly, but as long as at least, like, the last, like, at least one Ukrainian will be alive, they won't be able to do that. I mean, they're trying to kill all of us now, but, well, good luck. what can I say? But yeah, so just in your heads, Kievan Rus and Russia is not equal. Is well, they have completely different stories, and I will even maybe shock you even more. Russians never was like Moscovians, never was actually a part of Slavic people, Slavic cultures. They are not Slavic, they're not Slavs. So yeah, and there is actually a lot of information that you can find about this, and there's a lot actually of very good historians, like your like American, like British, like Canadian historians who are writing the history, and there are teachers in like the best universities. I will leave you maybe some of the names if I will find them in English. Yeah, so you would read the history of Ukraine if you would like to. But yeah, so get into our heads that Kievan Rus doesn't equal Russia. It's not Russia. It has nothing to do with Russia. When we already had like this thing that I was talking about, like 10th, 11th, like 12th, 13th century, we were blooming. We were at our highest point. Russia was still a swamp, and there were, well, it's not very correct to say that, to be honest, because Russia was just, there was some different kingdoms there. There was not a Moscovia was not a country back then, and there were completely different nations living there, completely different ethnicities, not nations, ethnicities living there. So yeah, so nothing to do with that. Let's get back to our beads theme. So as I already mentioned, Venice in 15th, 17th century, as I already said, Venice was at its bloom. It was the main supplier of glass, and of glass beads, like beads like this, and beads like just overall, just like bigger things. But in 18th century, worthy rival for Venetian products appeared on the market, and this was masters from Bohemia. So Bohemia is an old name for Czech Republic, modern Czech Republic. So Bohemian beads like this one, became like super widespread starting from like 1890s. And overall, just Bohemian glass also was like, at some point it was one of the most popular, it really put it Venice aside. And now it was more prestigious to have Bohemian glass than Venice glass. But getting back to beads, so it is still actually like this Bohemian, like Czech beads are still a thing. All of this is made from Czech beads still. This is like the main, I think it's safe for me to say that this is like the they still have a monopoly on beads, well, at least in Eastern Europe. I don't know about West, but in our country at least, I still, I haven't saw any type of other beads except of Czech beads from different companies, Czech companies, but still it's from Czech Republic. Technically, you can say that it's made up of traditional, authentical things, because back then, everything, as I said, from 1890s, there was the Czech beads was the main importer well, Czech Republic was the main importer of beads. Yes, because as I said briefly previously, the production of domestic beads did not catch on in Ukrainian territory, so that's why from the period of 16th to 19th century, we were like the first half of no, not the second half, right? The second half of this 19th century, our masters, our like women were using Venetian glass, Venetian beads, and starting from the end of 19th century and till this day, it's safe to say we are using the Bohemian one, the Czech one. Overall, need to mention that from the, let me check, the middle, yeah, the middle of 18th century, the fashion on beads, these beads, little one, became very actually popular in Europe. So the wealthiest one, they were actually customized and like whole paintings, done with beads. Even some of the panels were embroidered. I mean, the panels like for the whole wall was embroidered in this period of time with beads. Also, another popular thing that was created, it was bags, it was wallets, it was some covers, peel-off covers for the notebooks and all of this stuff. All of this were also started to be very popular. And at the even in the first half of the 19th century, some of the people, some of the masters, some of the companies, they started to create even schemes for beads embroidery. So I don't know how for you, but for me, when I was reading this, it was kind of a surprise for me that how popular actually this material was, because I don't know, when we were even studying the decorative arts in university, and like we had a very good course of decorative arts of Western part. Unfortunately, Ukrainian one was not, like, surprisingly, was not so good, because where there is very little information that you can actually find on your own. So this is like a big problem actually about everything when you're studying Ukrainian art, and just overall Ukrainian art mostly, because there is so little material that you can actually have access to, because, well, either it's some books situated in just one city in Ukraine, or it's some books of some writers that that will be sold for such amount of money, and you understand with your head that, well, obviously people, this is like the study of for like 10 years for this person, but still you see, like, obviously people, like, not a lot of us, can go and occasionally spend like thousands of hryvnias on just a book. And, not just a book. You see, I really don't like to call books just books, but, well, unfortunately, so yes, so I was caught by surprise that it was actually, that this material was so popular back then, and this is how things were going on. So yeah, and now, like, let's move on a little bit further into like Ukrainian jewelry, Ukrainian things. So this like necklaces, like these are necklaces, is a very big part of our traditional Ukrainian costume. And the distinctive features of Ukrainian costume, they were formed in the period of 14th till 18th century, mostly in the environment of the village people, or peasants, if you like, and Cossacks also. Based on, first of all, historical documents, on some paintings, later on photographs, we can see that glassware occupied glassware, this is right, this is called glassware. I mean, all of this occupied a very important a very important place in the complex of our Ukrainian clothing, Ukrainian costumes. At the end of the 19th century, there were very popular blown glass shiny beads, and they were, they were like kind of imitating some stones, precious stones, but just overall they were very shiny. That's why people were like, women were very fond of them, and they were called, so Ukrainian terms here a bit, they were called світлячки, лускавки, надуванці. So there's no translation for this, so a little bit of Ukrainian terminology for you. Another thing is that this is not beads, but it needs to be mentioned because it was very popular, and it's still one of the very popular things in Ukrainian jewelry. I mean, it was the so-called Venetian corals, or in Ukraine we call them писані пацьорки. Писані, it's basically I can translate as painted, and well, пацьорки is пацьорки. There is no translation. Пацьорки also is this word is, if I'm not mistaken, actually originates from Polish language. So we're sharing this thing, and well, basically what is that? That were well, back then, this was some beads, but beads like this, not this. They were created, all of these things were created individually, and all of these things was decorated individually also. So back then it was decorated with gold, with silver, with enamels, with other, way smaller glass threads. Because now, well, I know, well, at least one master, one woman, she's doing our traditional jewelry now, and she made this пацьорки from clay, and she uses the paint that suits clay to paint on clay. So we still have this tradition, so it still is going on, and well, very like fortunately, this tradition now starts to glow. A lot of young women, well, people like me, also like young women like me, would just finding out about this, because this theme is not so well. I mean, all of us, we know our traditional costumes just overall, but I don't think that a lot of people dives in pretty deeply into this theme. So this is how things happen with me. I just started to look at our photos, and I was like, well, hold on, this is actually very beautiful things. What are those? I started to Google, I started to take my books that I already had, and I started to be like, wow. And so then I found some schemes, and I started to I got to YouTube to like, well, how to do everything with beads, started to do, and well, created this, so this is like the third thing that I made, but I will mention, we'll talk about this a bit in a bit. So yeah, but getting back to Venetian corals, those things were very expensive, obviously, because they were made individually, so it is still pretty expensive, and not all of the women could afford this, basically. Thus, during the 19th and first half of 20th century, cheaper beaded jewelry became super widespread. We will be talking about I will tell you some of the like most popular types of our jewelries, beads jewelry, but in a bit. The oldest type of this beaded things, like this beads necklaces, as we know, is coming from the 90s, from like the beginning of 19th century, but some of researchers, they're telling they think that well, this beads jewelry, this beads necklace was created on such high with such high level of performance, that it gives reason to assume that the existence of the folk tradition of beaded decoration, of our like Ukrainian beaded decoration, is going down to 18th century. But obviously, you see, we don't have examples of 18th century, so historically we consider that this tradition began in 19th century. And obviously, currently, it's not. It's impossible, to trace the genesis of the origin of this ornaments. of these necklaces, of our jewelry. However, there is no doubt that the development of beaded jewelry in folk clothing could be associated with the long-term use of beads. I mean, starting from the Kievan Rus period. This is why I started with Kievan Rus. These beads of both natural, as pearls, for example, as I showed you, and artificial origin. So these glass beads or non-ferrous metals beads and any other beads. And important things also how this started to emerge was maybe because a lot of women, like village women, they started to be familiar with some Western examples of this. Like, for example, we know for the fact that Bohemians Bohemian sellers, they were coming to our theaters also, and they were selling their beads, but except of just the raw material, they were actually bringing with them some of the examples of the necklaces, so already made. So this is also maybe how these things were just picked up from this, and they were just then redone, reworked for Ukrainian artistic needs. Was redone with more our like our traditional colors, our traditional ornaments, and our traditional forms, and all of this stuff. Initially, this type of things, they were mostly popular in the western part of Ukraine. So there is very few examples in eastern part of Ukraine, in south part of Ukraine, where the beaded jewelry was done. But so that's why we're not talking that it was widespread there, because here in western part of Ukraine, northern part of Ukraine, central part of Ukraine, this was very popular. And in western part of Ukraine, we still actually have masters, we still have women that they're passing the tradition of this making through their family, and they already themselves pretty decent age, and they're still and they're passing this tradition to their grandchildren and children. So we are talking mostly the area of spreading of this was mostly west, north, and central Ukraine. Most accurately, I will name you the range of all of this, and I will obviously show you the map so you will understand what is this. So these type of things were popular in Western Podillia, in Опілля, in Покуття, in Підгір'я, Бойківщина, Гуцульщина, Лемківщина, lowlands of Transcarpathia, northern Bukovina, Volyn, Polissa, and middle Pridniprovia. So from the end of 19th century until the middle of 20th century, all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but in this period of time, the number of types of beaded jewelry has increased significantly. Because I think the reason was that because in this period of time, especially in the 20th century, and the beginning of since the 20th century, they started to actually sell these things. So the masters, the women, they started to be like, well, we can we can sell this thing, we can make a business out of this, and this is how I think this is why the number increased of different types of this jewelry. But unfortunately, you see, in the middle of the 20th century, the industrialization started to grow, and the industrialization came to the villages also. It was not just in the cities, and unfortunately, the penetration of industrial products into the village began to destroy the natural character of folk culture. So we have, the revival of these traditions now. Why I decided to do this video is because, I saw that a lot of, well, not a lot maybe, but there is now people who are starting to do this. Well, you see, I started to do this either. So I'm actually planning to maybe open a little shop on Instagram, so stay tuned to that. You can write me if you want, we can talk. So I'm making some I'm trying to find the old schemes of old products, of old different types of this jewelry, so for it to be the more authentic as possible. So if you are, if you're looking at this and you're like, oh, I want this one, you can write me down. We can, I can make you one. For the end, I wanted to stress two types of like very popular, like the most popular types of this beaded jewelry, Ukrainian beaded jewelry. So the first one is actually it's called herdan. So obviously, no translation, it's called herdan. It's etymologically, this word most probably comes from the Persian word garden. Again, I'm sorry for pronunciation, I don't know Persian, but which essentially means neck. And well, herdan is this things. You see, I'm wearing it here. It's a necklace one, so this is one I made it after this, not after, how do you, what word you use for that? So it is like a traditional ribbon herdan from Ivano-Frankivsk region. My grandpa, he's from Ivano-Frankivsk, so when I saw this, I was like, oh yes, this is mine. Well, partly mine, but still, I still belong there. So yeah. So this is one. Also, I want to show you another one example. So this is called also a herdan, and the most popular one is, as I already named it, ribbon herdan. So it's like in Ukrainian strichkovый herdan, but strichkovый, it's from the word strichka. Strichka is in Ukrainian, in English, ribbon. So basically, yeah. So this is another thing that also made it, and this is the old my god, English. I made it because I found the shim of old herdan from Zakarpattia. So Zakarpattia is like, the region, so we have Carpathian Mountains, and Zakarpattia it's like behind the Carpathian Mountains. So this is from there. And also one thing that they were creating. Oh, another thing also, this is actually very popular right now in Ukrainian, TikTok and all of this stuff. That one of our very famous women authors, Lesia Ukrainka, she was wearing it, and you could, I will show you the photo. You will see it on her neck. And another thing also, how these traditional herdans they were worn is. I got feral, I'm telling you, I got feral in 1 week. All of this is just in 1 week. Another thing, how they were traditional, let me look, yes, is also like this. This is another thing, this is also, there was two seams, you see also, this is from Zakarpattia, and this is also how traditionally our girls would wear it. They would just sew it on a ribbon, quite literally. This is what, also ribbon herdan, and they would put it right there, and it will be very, very beautiful. But after I think this is actually this thing that started to get like in this 20th century. So it was when they started to sell it more. This is maybe, I'm sorry I didn't check it out, but now if you research like herdan in Ukrainian and like on Google, for example, the first thing that you will see, it will be the herdani of this triangle form. Also, this is traditional form, it was also popular, but I mean, from this, everything started from this form. Then it evolved, yes, to these triangle forms, and also you would see some just very low one till your belly actually. So this is also called a herdan. Another thing, I think this is like even more popular than herdane, it's silenki. So these typological groups includes jewelry in the form of color. Also, their popular name is pletenka, but mostly it's selenka. So I think pletenka is like very, some kind of regional thing. But overall, it is known as selenka. And the word selenka is coming from the technique of performing the work, and in Ukrainian it sounds like seляти. So selenka from the word seляти. I think like you don't need to have a language to to hear it vocally how it sounds. It's believed that the first time that this beaded collar started to be produced, it was the middle of the 19th century, and it was created in the villages of Huculshchina. And until this day, I mean, they remained the most popular there, obviously. But there were actually a few regions like Volyn and Polisia where these like silinkas, they were not spread at all. Nowadays, it is very safe to say that these are the most widely spread jewelry in Ukraine, beaded jewelry in Ukraine. There's few types of silinka. I will name you just, you know, the like three like most common types. The first type is one-piece silinka, which has, you know, the appearance of the continuous braided strip of a rounded shape. So basically, we can say, I can really see. Well, basically, you know, took this part, just, you know, it put it like near your neck, closer to your neck. This is what one-piece silinka. Actually, yes, I took actually this one. So this is like, this is not a traditional thing. Well, colors are not traditional. The form is kind of traditional. They were also making, you know, this triangle things, but this, I don't think that it is appropriate to call this like traditional Ukrainian jewelry. But yeah, but it is basically just things like that. You see, you just have just one continuous ornament, nothing more. So this is what I'm talking about. Another thing is two pieces silinka. So it was divided by two pieces, obviously. So the collar and the ribbon and the collar. Other thing, like the most difficult thing it's considered to be the most difficult, it's kriza. I was trying to do kriza. Kriza, or other word is krivulka. So about the name also, there is some, I saw actually that there is some good discussion between our researchers that it is not very appropriate to call this kriza because it's, you know, it's a Soviet Union, it's like Soviet word, and you know, it's not original word, something like that. But I will tell you why I am, you know, why I dotted a little bit, because well, what is the difference between kriza and silinka? So kriza is actually a massive, a very large piece. So it actually needs, so it starts from your collar and it covers all of your neck, shoulders, till your chest actually, and also it covers your back. But a little story about also this type of colors. So it is well known that this type that, you know, the kriza one would be, you know, this very large one type of color started to become popular, but from a fabric, from thin fabric or from lace, started to emerge in Spain in 16th century. And then in 17th century it started to like widespread like all over the Europe. At the end of 19th century, at the beginning of 20th century, it came to Poland and it became again in fabric. This is the colors in fabric, and it became the part of their national costume. And about the name, this was called in Polish krzyżyk albo krzyżka. So again, you don't need to know the name to, you know, vocally hear kriza and krzyżka. So I think this is why it's very doubtful about, you know, that it's like it's Soviet Union name kriza. This is why I think that it is appropriate to use kriza and krivulka. But I mean, again, I might be wrong, you know, I'm not trying to put my own truth on you or on anyone else. But the only thing, so this is how, like, maybe this is how this kriza or krivulka came into Ukrainian traditional costume. But our masters, our girls, our women, they interpreted this fabric colors, and they started to make them in beads. Not beads. Why I want to say beads? I want to say always the word beads. They started to create them in beads, in these little beads. And because this, you know, these pieces were actually, I mean, obviously I will show you. This is also, some of the photos will be more like, you know, this is modern interpretation, but you will just see by the form what I mean. So yeah. So the main thing about what divides silinka and kriza is the form, is that very, very large work. And also when they were doing, they were not, you just, you know, well, putting, well, obviously not things like that, but something like, you know, similar. They were putting actually the buttons. I mean, for these things also they were putting buttons sometimes, but what I want to say is that they would put buttons, you know, like on the whole wide of the collar. So when it would be, when you will like put it on, it would cover completely your bag. Because now, you know, I have this triangle shape right now on my bag, because I have just one thing that is like this thing, I'm sorry, I don't know how to call it in English, there. So I have this triangle thing, but traditionally it needs to be closed completely. So yeah, so this is one of the most distinctive features of kривулька, of kriza, and the most popular. So I tried to make a Лемківська кривулька. So Lemkivщина is like a little region in Carpathian Mountains. They made like they created the most beautiful, I think, kривулька out of all of other pieces. And yeah, and they created, and they were like, they were the biggest. They would create, I don't know, from 2 to 5 ornamental strips. So you see, I have here just 2, and now can you imagine like 5 another? It's like so it will be like that. So yeah, so Lemkівські кривульки is like, I personally consider them to be like the most beautiful out of all of them. So yeah, so basically this is everything that I have for today. A little like brief story, brief history, brief, you know, just for you to see what we have, what is popular here in Eastern Europe. And yeah, and as I said, I'm actually really planning on opening like a little shop with all of these things, because I'm really fond of, you know, doing this. And, you know, at the end of the day, like, this is a very beautiful things. And so yeah, so stay tuned for this. I will also put in the description some of the, like, one of the books where I took the main information. It is in Ukrainian though, but well, it might be interesting for my fellow Ukrainians. But for all of you who are not Ukrainians, there is even a link, you can actually look it online. So if you're interested, just to look the photos, you know, because there is a lot of photos, so different examples, different pieces. So yes, so I will leave it obviously for you. As I said, I will try to find these historians also. I don't know if you can find their works in English online, but I mean, in Ukrainian translation there is online. I mean, I have also the printed copy of some of them, but well, whatever. So yeah, so as usually, what is the most important for me is that you found something interesting for you, something new for you, and I think a lot of you found something new for yourself today, obviously. And yeah, and hope to see you soon. And I promise you that that's all. We will move on for a little bit from our theme of jewelries. Even though I think, well, I mean, there is still like 5 people just watching this, and I think that 5 of you are not like are not against it, but like whatever. And promise that the next time I will make something about an artist. We will talk about paintings, maybe. I have no idea who we'll be talking about, but well, I will find someone. There's plenty of them. So yeah, so wish you good morning, good day, good night. Time to go to sleep, as usually. Time to go to sleep. And yeah, and hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.